Hello guys, and welcome back to another video in the monkey bike restoration series. So in the last episode we got the frame restored, and I have to say I have begun assembly of the bike. Obviously I'm filming it over time for the finale video where we do the final assembly, but today we're going to be focusing on wheels. So the wheels are knackered, hubs need spraying, we need new parts, new tyres, new everything. We're going for a full run through restoration. So today in this video we're going to go through that and cover getting these wheels back to looking new. We're going to roll straight into the teardown of these wheels. These things are old, crusty, knackered, rusty, and just in need of some good TLC. So got a time lapse running here of me stripping these things down. It was actually an okay job. We did come across one issue which we will cover, but the actual mechanical parts, the bolts, the hubs, studs, all that thing came apart with relatively little effort, which is a good thing, because anyone who strips down these old parts knows that when they're rusted, bolts can be a pain. But we managed to get these things apart with no broken bolts, which is a big win. So here we are, just finishing out taking these last bolts in a two-piece rim, and yeah, we wrestle those bolts out and we move on to trying to de-bead these tyres. So mechanically they're apart, but what I found was after sitting for 44 years or being used for that long, the tyres decided to glue themselves to the rim in a way that was an absolute nightmare. And here's a small idea of what I ended up doing. This is only a few things of the list of stuff I tried to do. We had it in vices, all sorts of stuff, soaked them overnight, a variety of different levers and tools, but it really just didn't want to budge, which kind of brings me to my next point of changing them. So let's start by taking a look with what we have. So the wheels are stripped down, and this is where we stand now. We've got sprocket, brake shoes which are knackered. We've got the most important bit, which are the hubs. So this holds sprocket, bolts to the wheels, yeah, just your main pieces to these. Over here we have wheels tucked in the corner, and those rims are completely bonded to the tyre. I have been levering on them, I have been absolutely squeezing the life out of these tyres, but they have just become one. So as part of the rebuild we'll be getting new rims. I've got a big order coming which I will unbox shortly, and I've got new brake shoes, sprockets, bearings, seals, everything. So that is going to be the content of the video. One of the things we're starting with is the restoration of some bolts. So for anyone into their Z50s or monkey bikes, bolts are expensive. I think an axle bolt's like £25, so rather than getting new, we're going to restore and try and keep this reasonably cost efficient. So to give you an idea, here's one not cleaned and polished, and here's one polished up. So they actually look awesome, and I'll drop a close-up of them now. You guys can see that we've got a big cardboard box full of new OEM parts to rebuild these wheels. So quickly getting them all out. We've got chains, bearings, the works, new tyres as you can see here, and just getting it all out ready to kind of put the first bit together, which we're going to do now. So we're going to start building these wheels and rims, starting with the rim, tubes and tyres, and then build the hubs up from there. So let's get into it. With the wheels all assembled and put to one side, we look at the other parts, which I touched on earlier, which is the main hubs and all these parts. So first thing to do is get them stripped down. That involves trying to get the seal out, knocking the bearings out, and giving everything a once over to make sure no repairs are needed on these parts, and we can go ahead to clean them up. So overall, as you can see, these parts came apart pretty easily. The bearings knocked out okay, and for something that had been together for so long and probably seen a lot of miles, they were in okay condition, a bit gritty, but for a 1978 bike I was pretty impressed. So this is a quick overview of what the hub looks like. You can see pretty manky, a lot of surfaces need cleaning, a lot of grime, some rust on the brake shoe, or the brake liner should I say, but we'll get them cleaned up. So straight into our tin and my go-to degreaser. We get some gunk and just soak the part. With these sort of long standing parts, the best thing to do is get some degreaser on early and just let it sit. Right, an update on where we're at. We've got both hubs stripped down, degreased, and yeah, cleaned up, all dried off. We've done the same with both of these. This one I just had to heat up to knock out the brake pivot for the brake shoes. That's all good. Next up, I think we're going to sand these down, ready for a coat of paint. All the hardware's there. They need to be buffed on the Scotch-Brite wheel. Coming outside, we've got the other one of these, which we'll paint, and yeah, paint it, let it dry in the sun, and then hopefully knock some bearings and seals back into it. One thing that we've got to be careful of, on the top of this hub here, it's been dented slightly. It doesn't affect the bearing face, but it affects the seal face. So I'm either going to machine that out there, put that in the lathe and machine this out, or we will just leave it and apply loads of grease and make sure the seal goes in okay. But so far, not too bad. And yeah, let's get these sanded and reef paint. So next up is what I find the most laborious and boring part of these projects. In the ideal scenario, I'd have got these vapor blasted or a really fine media blast, but I thought let's do it all in-house or at home in the shed and see what sort of finish we could get. So give them a sand, we clean them, and then we mask them all up. We're masking bearing surfaces, threaded surfaces, and anything that we pretty much want to keep clean. But take time with that. As with all painting, it's all in the prep. So take the time to do this bit well, and it pays off in the long run. For the paint, we are literally on the patio floor, a bit of cardboard in the sun, and we're going to give it a coat of paint. So we're using the same paint I use for my engine case, so it's a Honda Cloud Silver colour, and yeah, cleaned, acetoned, and then we start giving it a coat of paint. And straight away these look 10 times better, and they'll look even better with a few more coats and some lacquer. Right, with those parts all painted and looking really good, we can now get on to the fun part, which is the assembly. So we pull off all the tape to reveal that nice clean cut finish, and then we start putting these things together. So first thing is the bearing on the top side. So small bit of heat, it's an aluminium hub, so it will expand really quickly. And we've also gone and put our bearings in the freezer. I'm sure most people know this, but this helps a lot and just takes the pressure off when you're trying to knock them in. With this side it's quite a tight fit, so it's still needed to be hammered, but certainly a lot easier than putting them in at room temperature. Spacers go in next, and we're just keeping it clean and applying grease as needed, and then we knock in the back side as well. We now flip the hub over and look at the other side. Obviously it's a bearing on each end with a space in the middle, so you can't compress those bearings, but you can see right now we've got a little sleeve we push past, which goes in really nicely, and then this side was a bit easier, so a few taps with a nicely fitting socket and it slides home. And then most important thing is the dust seal. So obviously wheels are going to see mud, dust, everything, so making sure the dust seal's in there and seated correctly is a big thing. With that hub done, that's pretty much together, and we can now put the hub into the wheel, which is really simple. It's 4 bolts, nice and easy with nuts on the back. So put these together and that is the wheel coming together. To finish off the rear wheel, we grab a brand new sprocket. So this was key with the restoration, new sprockets all round to match a new chain, and that slides on 3 studs on the hub, and then you have nuts that fit down onto that. So that's a really nice finishing touch, and yeah, finishes this rear wheel off. And this is what the wheels, or the wheel, looks like finished. So looks absolutely mega. I've reused all the bolts, so I'm dead happy about that. But now it's time to move on to the brake shoes, which were quite interesting. I've never done small brake shoes like this, and it was a bit of a pig. So we got Honda OEM brake shoes, and these aren't too expensive, which is really good. So it was a no-brainer to replace them, but I did have to wrestle these in place. So there's a bit of back and forward and thinking, but eventually worked out a nice way to do it. Managed to hook one side on and then get the other side clamped in place. And once they're in place, they're going nowhere. But you can see here, finally work it out and get it set up nicely, and that's ready to go into the wheel. Before though, we give it a quick blast with brake and clutch cleaner to make sure it is spotless. With one wheel pretty much having gone through the full restoration process from dirty to new, we add the final axle bolt and then we'll move on to the front wheel. So for this, I'm going to run a time lapse and you're going to watch me smash together this front wheel and get it all built up like the rear. And that, guys, is the final assembly for these wheels. They are now all refurbed. I really hope you've all enjoyed the video. Please do drop a like, and even better, subscribe if you enjoyed this content, because there will be more coming. But until the next one, catch you then. And that right there is the wheels now complete, fully built up, new seals, bearings, refurbished bolts. We've got new brake shoes in both of them. We've got a new sprocket over here, some new chain adjusters, and yeah, they are looking absolutely awesome. So that's another thing ticked off, and we're one step closer to getting this thing completed.